Penguin Random House Audio presents The Divider, Trump in the White House, 2017 to 2021, by Peter Baker and Susan Glasser. Read for you by Michael Quinlan. Introduction. The Calling Card of a Presidency. When we set out to write The Divider, we began with a simple premise: that Donald Trump's refusal to accept defeat in the 2020 election and the insurrection at the Capitol he summoned to overturn his loss were no violent outliers, but the inexorable culmination of a sustained 4-year war on the institutions and traditions of American democracy. As the historian Michael Beschloss observed on the afternoon of January 6, 2021, while the pro-Trump mob surged through the halls of Congress, chanting, "Hang Mike Pence! Hang Mike Pence!" and sending the vice president and lawmakers fleeing for their lives. This day has been foreshadowed by every hour of this presidency. This is a book about what happened in that presidency, about an unimaginable period in our history when the United States had a leader for the first time who neither knew nor subscribed to many of the fundamental tenets of the Constitution and even actively worked to undermine them. From the day he took office until the day he left, Trump sought to bend, if not break, many of the rules that constrained presidents in the American system, so that holding on to power, despite the will of the voters, was only the next logical step. To understand what happened on January 6, 2021, it is necessary to understand what happened on January 20, 2017, and all the days in between. This is not exclusively a work of history, however. Trump and Trumpism have captured the Republican Party and radicalized it. The former president, twice impeached and twice acquitted, is the only chief executive since the founding of the nation to obstruct the peaceful transfer of power, and he has spent the time since his exit from the White House seeking to become only the second president ever to return to the office. Tens of millions of his followers believe the big lie that he was not defeated and continue to do so to this day. His party's leadership, rather than repudiate him, still looks to him as its titular head and president in waiting. The Trump era is not past. It is America's present and maybe even its future. We could think of no more urgent project than to record and seek to understand what really happened when Trump was in the White House. It is not yet a matter for the archives. It is a report from an active crime scene, still under investigation by multiple authorities. Someday, whether soon or not, it will no longer be a subject of current events, and then, we hope, this book can play a different role, explaining for future disbelieving generations what it was like when a crude New York real estate mogul with an itchy Twitter finger, an outsized self-regard, and an extreme disdain for all who came before him ended up as the President of the United States. We chose to call the book The Divider because for 4 years, from the American carnage speech that opened his tenure to the rigged election charade that cursed its tumultuous ending, Trump pitted Americans against Americans, the United States against its allies, and his own staff and family members against each other. He threw matches on the dry kindling of race relations in the United States and escalated a polarizing culture war over competing visions of national identity. Even when the deadliest plague in a century struck, the nation's 45th president spoke of two countries, his America, red America, and that of the blue states opposed to him. He soon turned a simple thing like a face mask worn to protect against a public health threat into a wedge issue between warring parties. Trump made divisiveness the calling card of his presidency. This alone set him apart from all the other American presidents of our lifetime. George H.W. Bush called for a kinder, gentler America. Bill Clinton vowed to be a repairer of the breach. George W. Bush presented himself as a uniter, not a divider. Barack Obama declared there was not a blue America and red America, but the United States of America. None of them fully lived up to those ideals, but they at least gave voice to the aspiration that a president should endeavor to bring the country together. Trump never saw it that way. He exploited the fissures in American society to gain, wield, and hold on to power. He did not create those fissures, any more than he created the weaknesses in the people around him that he so effectively used for his own purposes. America, on the eve of his ascendance, was more fractured than at any other time in generations. But he leveraged America's differences for his own ends and created new ones along the way. He was, is, and always will be a wrecking ball, as a Republican senator once put it, the chaos candidate who would become a chaos president, just as one of his 2016 Republican rivals had warned. He sought out enemies, and where they did not exist, he invented them. With Trump, there was always an us and always a them. For most of his 70 years before arriving at the White House, this was of little consequence outside his family and the business worlds in which he operated. The fact that he lied and cheated and did not pay his bills harmed mostly the creditors affected by his 6 bankruptcies or those ripped off in his various failed ventures. The producers at NBC profited from his flair for conflict with a hit television show whose signature moment each week was Trump firing a different contestant. The New York City tabloids feasted on his many personal and professional feuds, to his shame-free delight. But when he improbably won election as President of the United States in 2016, this became America's reality too. Over the next 4 years, Trump identified the vulnerabilities in Washington and in those who served there. He weaponized his prolific lies for his political benefit and bullied any who opposed him, setting up his administration as an endless series of loyalty tests. He hijacked a Republican Party that was riven and ailing, a party that has now lost the popular vote in 7 of the last 8 presidential elections, and turned it into a cult of personality so dedicated to him that instead of producing a policy platform at its last convention, it simply issued a resolution saying it was for Trump. The Divider draws on our 4 years of covering Trump's presidency for the New York Times and the New Yorker, as well as about 300 original interviews conducted exclusively for this book. We obtained private diaries, memos, contemporaneous notes, emails, text messages, and other documents that shed new light on Trump's time in office. We spoke with many of those who worked most closely with Trump, his cabinet secretaries and senior White House officials, his political strategists, lawyers, national security advisors, and counselors. Many spoke with us for their first extensive interviews. We also talked with others who struggled with how to respond to Trump's volatile presidency, including members of Congress, generals, business executives, and foreign leaders. And we traveled twice to Mar-a-Lago to interview Trump himself. What emerged from our reporting were stories we had never heard and fresh understandings of stories we thought we knew. To a remarkable degree, it was a portrait of a rogue president, one whose combative instincts, erratic ways, and tendency to conflate the national interest with his personal interest took the country closer than we realized to outright conflict with Iran and North Korea, and to the brink of blowing up NATO, even as Russia prepared to use force to redraw the map of Europe. He vindictively ordered the pullout of thousands of troops from Germany because he was mad at its leader. He tried to buy Greenland after a billionaire friend told him it was a good idea. He secretly sought to abolish a federal appeals court after it ruled against him. He privately expressed admiration for Hitler's generals, while calling his own generals fucking losers, and subjecting them and others to racist rants that made it clear his infamous Oval Office comments about shithole countries was no isolated lapse. The people who were most fearful of his reign were those in the room with him, the ones he himself appointed, who behind his back compared him to a czar or a mob boss, or even, in the case of his first White House counsel, a monster in a horror movie. His hand-picked chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff grew so outraged at the president's conduct that he secretly drafted a resignation letter accusing Trump of subscribing to many of the principles that we fought against in America's wars, only to put it in a drawer and resolve to stay in order to resist a commander-in-chief he considered a threat to democracy. Another top general warned Trump to his face that he was acting like a dictator. His intelligence chief privately wondered whether the president was a Russian stooge. His chief of staff secretly consulted a book by psychiatrists questioning Trump's mental fitness. His wife thought he was blowing it against the coronavirus and his daughter and son-in-law thought he was wrong.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?